That's another thing.
On the bottom, what are ACH?
But again, that is what they rely on. They rely on quick, and I'll say this, but it's nothing personal, failure to pay attention to detail. I don't know how many times a day you see these, you become numb to it, it becomes routine, and that is what they rely on. So first, this is what jumped out at me. And again, based on my experience, that is a telltale sign that this was produced by probably a non-English speaking person. Secondly, went online, Chicago Title is a legitimate company. They do have an office there. But on their outward-facing website, the phone number's different. The fax number's different. And while these could be internal numbers that they don't necessarily want the public to see, those are red flags to me. You're generating business, you want a phone number to be out there. You want the public to know a phone number or a fax number. You don't want to have a blog that relies on people having to remember specific numbers. That jumped out at me. So between the spelling, and I won't even comment on the Caliph aspect of this. Had I noticed the improper spelling of Scottsdale, I also looked up the ABA number. I won't say it's wrong, but it's different than what I found. All of that would have told me, I'm going to stop, I'm not doing anything until I can talk to somebody that I know, somebody that I trust, who can validate this.
Yeah.
And it's not as simple as that, but that's essentially what it comes down to.
Yeah.
The way this compromise works, it relies on electronic communication, contact that's not face-to-face. Especially if I can go on Facebook or whatever and find out that maybe Dell's on vacation. These people, the days of the hacker being some pimply-faced kid sitting in his mom's basement are done. These people are typically hired by foreign governments. They're typically engaged by foreign governments, the military. These people are probably as intellectually superior as anybody you know. So they do research. We use the term recon. They look at this as a military operation and they put forth the effort that is worthy of their time.
So this is a text message from Jim. He was actually at the bank to Kareem. I know, guys, man, we were so blessed that it didn't happen. I mean, he was seconds away.
Yeah, this came close.
Now, is the bank gonna check that too? I mean, when they see that wire, are they trained to check those things?
I don't want to
as
sound
well?
callous, but why would they? All they know is they have what appears to be a legitimate wire transfer order. Oh, can you go back to that slide with the this is what even spoke more damning of this email. And I don't know how you operate your businesses, but anytime an email seems overly pushy, or they seem rushed or hurried, be aware of that. This person says, we don't accept ACH transfers. There might be a legitimate need for that, but my question would be, why not? These are for wire transfers only. Well, a wire transfer is pretty much a guaranteed transfer between point A and B. My understanding of the ACH process is that they act as a middleman until both parties either verify or agree. One is secured, one is not. You're forcing me to use an unsecured method, and you're telling me that this is my only option. That speaks volumes to me. And again, I don't know the intimacies of your businesses. There might be a reason for not using ACH, but I would be suspect of that.
Well, also, since the closing is not gonna be for 3 weeks, why would you have to wire it? You could just send a personal check, there's plenty of time to, you know.
I want the money now, I don't want to have to wait.
Yeah, and go in the consumer's.
You don't need the money now.
Andy, go in the consumer's perspective there. This guy, when was the last time Jim bought a house, David?
Been a while.
Yeah, probably a decade.
No.
So he They don't know, we're in the business every day, we know that it should be maybe 3 days prior, you know, with loan docs getting there. But even then, I would wire the day before or not even wire at all, I agree
Right.
with you, from now on, I might just do certified funds.
That was probably our saving grace, was how far ahead of closing this came through. If this had come through 3 days before closing, you probably wouldn't even contacted us.
Yeah, it would have seemed more legitimate. Yeah.
Right.
Over the last 18 months, you know, if nothing else, we track figures and data. Almost $1 billion has been lost by people in the US only. This is huge. There's a reason people are doing this. You know, there was a famous quote of a bank robber decades ago. Why do you rob banks? Because that's where the money is. I know where the money is when it comes to financial transactions. It's being wired back and forth around the world. With the popular increases in electronic communication and the lack of sophisticated knowledge and security practices in place, it's a gold mine. And these people have hidden themselves, some thinly veiled, some backstopped tremendously. Even if you recognize that this is a fraudulent transaction, the likelihood of us ever being able to prosecute the person behind it, slim and none. Because we can't find out who they are. We can't get, we don't know who they are. We can't verify their identity. And if we do verify their identity, they're in a country that doesn't have extradition. They don't have diplomatic ties with the US. So I could know where the person is, and that is not uncommon. I just can't reach out to them. You got a question?
It's gonna be a stupid question, but how do they know that there's even a transaction happening with this guy's name, with this title company?
That is where the investigation would come into play. I don't know. To think that this was generated, obviously, in a vacuum is not wire money from point A to B. Well, you know Dell, you know his name, you know he's the boss. Double check that. What does it take to make a phone call? Dell, I just got an email, is this a legitimate transaction? Have someone, as authentication, have someone else in the office who's in a position to verify before that transaction is sent out, verify that that is a legitimate transaction. The other twist on this is that Dell sends an email that says, hey, we got a hot deal going. Again, the urgency, the push to get this through. I need you to call this attorney who's going to make arrangements for you to wire transfer funds. Verify, double check that he's making the request. And if it's coming from him, you actually speak to him, fine, you have a fairly high degree of comfort that it's a legitimate transaction. But those are the two variations that we see. Again, the rush, the hurry, the push, it's an emergency. It's no different than the, I'm being held by a foreign government, you need a wire transfer $5,000 so they let me out of jail. Well, you don't have a cousin that's in China. You don't have one that's in Nigeria. So be suspect of it. Yeah.
In your experience doing this, if we catch it in advance like this, is there any way that a prosecution could ever take place or likely to? And if we end up, the wire transfer gets put through, your client loses money, in your experience, do they ever recover or prosecute anyone? Or is this just a matter of, if we catch it in advance, thank God, we saved it, we move on? Is that kind of the way it is?
After talking to Dell's friend Steve, he has done this 3 or 4 times and been successful in getting it stopped. And that's what I wanted to finish up on. There's what we call a financial fraud kill chain. There is a mechanism in place between law enforcement and financial institutions that says under a certain set of circumstances, the internet kill switch is a big term right now, we have the ability to make a request that a particular transaction be terminated. And we will provide the cause, the justification for that request. Worst case scenario, if it turns out to be legitimate, fine, you reinitiate the transfer. Worst case scenario, somebody's grateful that their life savings isn't being squandered. But there are stipulations. there was a time where this only applied to international transactions. Thankfully, somebody had some good sense to say, well, domestic isn't very much, it's not that different. So it applies to both foreign and domestic transactions. The financial exposure has to be equal to or greater than $50,000. And the stipulation is that the transaction had to have been initiated within the prior 72 hours. Realistically speaking, and I'll say this, and I don't know who's recording this, if anybody, but if you're 36 hours past, you're probably not gonna get anything back. But stipulation is for you to make this request 72 hours.